Project New World. By Ninja Mare. Chapter 2, The Three Little Fillies and the Big Metal Dog. Author's note. I might add to this chapter, but until then, I hope you folks like what's in this chapter. So far the day has been a pretty rough one for the QD Mark Crusaders. Today they tried being assistants to both Aloe and Lotus, and they were actually doing pretty well, and surprisingly they actually didn't break or ruin anything. But at the end of their brief work period they still didn't earn their QD marks. Both spa sisters were sad for the fillies and thought that they would have made excellent spa ponies. To congratulate the three for doing an excellent work, both sisters gave a good amount of bits to the three. Well, that was another bust. Scootaloo moped as she slowly propelled herself on her scooter. Don't worry Scootaloo, we'll find out what we're good at someday, Sweetie said as she trotted next to her friend. Maybe we can try something else, Apple Bloom said, trying to bring her friend's spirits up. That's when all three of their stomachs grumbled. But first let's get our lunch boxes from the clubhouse, and take a break. The other two fillies agreed with Apple Bloom as they continued on their journey. When the Crusaders have reached their clubhouse they found something that was completely out of this world. Standing a mere 8 feet from the trio of fillies was some kind of large, strange-looking creature. Its body looked odd, like it was made out of nothing but metal. Even its head was unusual as it looked like a ball with a camera lens. The creature just kept its one eye trained on the three fillies, as they looked back at it with faces showing great confusion and dumbfounded expressions, with agape jaws. What is that? Scootaloo whispered as she continued to look at the large metal creature, as it just stood there, its soul eye feeling like it was peering right into their very souls. I don't know. I've never seen anything like it, Apple Bloom said as she looks the creature over, a sense of fear slowly growing in the pit of her stomach. The fillies gasped in surprise when the large metal creature came trotting over to them, showing just how large, how massive it was when compared to them. In fact, when the creature was now only a foot from them, the fillies barely passed its forelegs wrist. Apple Bloom, Scootaloo, and Sweetie Belle took a step back as the creature lowered its head, the fillies now getting a closer look at its singular eye, even seeing their reflections. As the imposing creature continued to look at the fillies, Sweetie Belle slowly raised a hoof to reach out to touch the creature, which didn't move as it just continued to stare at the foals. The unicorn's hoof eventually reached the creature's head, and gently tapped it, causing a soft ping to echo among the small clearing. After the filly has tapped the metal head of the creature, the fillies saw the creature's long slender tail reach over its body and slithered over to the foals, where they saw 3 slender gray tendrils emerge from the tip. Naturally, this unusual action caused the fillies to cringe slightly, but when the tail tendrils were a foot from them, the fillies, they took another step back out of uncertain fear. 0px times 0px. That's F far enough, F fella, Scootaloo said as she spread her wings, trying to look intimidating. But the creature's tail just kept moving towards them. The fillies all curled up into little balls as they huddled up, now scared witless as they could now only lay there on the ground. But instead of feeling what they thought would be claws or teeth ripping into them, the three foals felt like some pony was petting their heads. They all looked up at the towering creature, and saw each of its tail tendrils petting their heads. The fillies were actually surprised, they thought this thing was going to eat them, but instead, it was being very nice. The tail was then pulled back a bit, and the tendrils booped each of the fillies on the snout. Hey, they all said in unison as they rubbed their scrunched up noses, but the fillies then started to giggle as they looked up at the giant creature as it tilted its round head. Guess you're not a bad critter, aren't ya? Apple Bloom said as she raised a hoof, and gently petted the creature's metal head. The creature's body still didn't move an inch, but its tail was wagging a little. I still want to know what it is, Sweetie said as she walked around, and under the creature, seeing what looked like cables and other pieces of machinery attached to its body. Maybe it's some very rare animal that came from the Everfree, Scootaloo said as the creature began to move, keeping its eye on the three fillies, while also trying to watch its steps around the fillies as they began trotting around, and under the giant creature. R.O.V.E.R. While the very small equine foals continue to trot about, the R.O.V.E.R tries to keep them in the range of its eye and tail camera, continuously recording the three alien equines, which was causing the home base personnel staff to just marvel at the sight. Aside from the equines' adorable appearance, their bizarre horse-like nickering, neigh, and whinnies were almost some type of rhythmic pattern instead of unintelligible animal sounds. It's almost as if they were talking. Even if the R.O.V.E.R is unable to transmit sounds itself, it is able to record noises with its specially crafted microphone in its head. As the fillies circled and began interacting with one another, the mechanical beast started to scan the three equines, compiling data for the researchers to study. The scans of each of the foals has been giving the R.O.V.E.R interesting data to send back. After all, unicorns and pegasi are supposedly nothing more than mythological creatures. And yet, there are two foals of said mystic equines in front of the machine, and the home base personnel was really interested to study the data, and the creatures up close. The R.O.V.E.R continues to scan the three foals with its eye. The little foals seem to be talking to the machine, they seem to be trying to emulate something, but since the foal's speech is nothing but equine noises in a set pattern, the R.O.V.E.R and the home base staff is unable to comprehend it. The three fillies then ran off to somewhere, leaving the mechanical beast in the clearing. The R.O.V.E.R then started to leave the clearing, following the path that the foals took, as it was instructed to follow them and see if it can locate any more equines. Traversing through more and more apple trees, the mechanical beast eventually came across a road, an actual padded out dirt road. The R.O.V.E.R's eye scanned over the road, noting several dozen hoof prints, and narrow wheel tracks. After looking over the road for a minute, the mechanical beast began traveling down the left side of the road, following the tracks and wheel marks. However, as it was traveling down the path, its audio receptors picked something up. The sound was like something was flying at great speeds. The R.O.V.E.R unit zoned in on where the sound was originating from, so when it turned its head skyward, it found the source of the sound. And it was heading right for it. Cutie Mark Crusaders. The Cutie Mark Crusaders were absolutely over the moon. After all, there was a giant unknown creature, a friendly one at that, at their clubhouse. But of course no pony would believe them, if they went to town and told ponies about it, but they just had to tell some pony. That's when they decided to go and tell Applejack. However, when they told Applejack what they saw, Apple Bloom, for the last time, there is no such thing as a giant metal dog thing. Applejack said for fourth time to her little sister, although to the mayor it feels more like 100 times, but that's beside the point. But we're telling you the truth, Applejack. Apple said frantically before Sweetie Belle continued. Yeah. It's really real, Applejack. Sweetie Belle squealed as Scootaloo then continued, and tried to convince the older pony. And it's at our tree house, we can show you right now. The apple farmer just gives a tired sigh as she heaves the basket of apples off her back. All right, fine. Applejack grumbled. Take me to see this giant metal dog of yours. The fillies cheered that they managed to persuade Applejack, and began galloping as fast as their little legs can go, while Applejack followed after them at a brisk pace, while Applejack was inclined to believe that her little sister wouldn't lie to her. It was hard for the older sister to believe that filly, and her friends, came across a giant cat or dog creature that has metal skin. But just as the group of ponies left past through the front gate, the four ponies saw something like a thin red line shot into the air. After seeing the light which fired off into the sky 2 more times, the four ponies then heard a painful scream, which caused them to go into a full gallop. As they galloped down the path and came to where the red lights were being shot into the air, and when Applejack saw what was firing the red lights, she, and the 3 foals stopped dead in their tracks. Towering over a pinned rainbow dash, behind held down by a large paw, Applejack saw what looked like some kind of giant, metal-armored dog or cat. Applejack gritted her teeth as she was ready to charge at the giant creature. "Let ma friend go!" Applejack bellowed as she scoffs at the ground, while the giant creature's singular eye stared her down as it glowed with a faint blue glow. "Wait, Applejack, don't attack it. That's the creature we were talking." Applejack turned to her little sister after hearing those words. "This is the thing you wanted me to see." Sweetie Belle quickly butted in before Applejack got too much of a bad impression. "We swear it's a nice creature, Applejack, we promise." Before any pony else could say anything, Rainbow Dash spoke up. "I saw this thing going towards Ponyville, and I tried to stop it," the mare said as her injured wing fidgeted. "Or, at least, I tried to stop it. But this thing is as hard as a rock, and it can somehow shoot magic blasts like how Twilight can." All the ponies then watched as the creature's tail snaked its way down to the pinned mare. This caused Applejack and Rainbow Dash to fidget, the Pegasus more so, while the apple farmer was ready to charge at the creature, but Applejack quickly got a dumbfounded expression on her face, when the creature's tail gently petted Rainbow's head and removed its paw. Rainbow was greatly confused on what was going, and when she looked over her shoulder to peer at the creature, she was carefully brought up to her hooves by the creature's tail. "See," Scudalo said as she, and her friends, trot over to the creature. "It's a friendly creature, you just have to not attack it." The adult ponies were still baffled at what is going on, especially when the creature's tail patted the fillies' heads. "Okay, I guess I may have out." Rainbow groaned as she reflexively flapped her wings, and having a jolt of pain course through her back. Applejack rushed over to her friend, and got a good look at her injured wing. Luckily it wasn't too bad, but it was still in rough shape. "All right, here's what we're going to do. I am going to take RD to the hospital, to make sure her wing gets treatment. While you three," Applejack said as she looked at the trio of fillies, while she leans up against Rainbow Dash, who leaned back into the mare. "Try and keep that thing here, last thing we need is to have it follow us and cause a panic." The three fillies nodded, and tried to get the large metal creature to follow them, and after some doing, the creature followed the trio as they lead it back to their clubhouse. While the fillies were leading their massive friend back into the orchard, Applejack helped Rainbow Dash to the hospital to have her wing taken care of. After which, the apple farmer would gather up her friends, and maybe try and get in contact with the princesses, so they can figure out what this unusual looking creature was, and what to do with it. YouTuber announcement: sorry I've not been posting as much as I should have, but school comes, my father says.